Happy Wednesday, folks, and welcome back to #AskGSM episode 498 here today for Wednesday, June 14th, 2023. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. 2 episodes off from the big 500, meaning next week is 499, and in 2 weeks, episode 500. As I've said before, I am planning for that day to be a live episode. Not exactly sure what time, not 100% sure it's even going to be that day yet. Most likely it will be on not the exact anniversary, like I've said before, the exact anniversary of the show, I think is July 7th, if not July 8th. I think it's July 8th. I can't that day. That's my anniversary with Alexis as well. So, and that's completely coincidental. We didn't start dating on the day that I started doing the show 10 years ago. But we'll likely be doing the show episode 500 on the show in 2 weeks. So keep an eye out for that. I am looking forward to it. We've done live shows for episodes not 100, but definitely 200, 300, and 400. Almost positive. So, looking forward to that. Keep an eye out for that. If you want to send in a question to the show in the meantime, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/gram.gsm.matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. We'll get right into it here. Micah does it from YouTube. Their sole question for this week: what dream matches does John Cena have left in WWE, and when do you think we'll see him return next? Honestly, I don't think Cena has... This might be a hot take. I don't think he has any dream matches left. The biggest dream matches for me, once upon a time, probably would have been AJ Styles. Him and Shinsuke Nakamura would have been a cool clash of styles. Kevin Owens, maybe. He has since faced all three of those guys. The AJ feud is soon after Styles arrived in WWE. I'm glad they got that over with when they did. 2016 was the perfect time to do it. They were still capitalizing on when AJ had just arrived in the company, turned him heel for it, had amazing matches. Cena wasn't washed yet in the ring. People have used that term. I know Monster has brought that up before, that Cena's washed in the ring. I would probably agree with that, though. It's not my word, but I would probably agree with it. Just due to the fact that he really hasn't had any great matches in quite some time now. That being said, I'm glad they did the feud when they did. The storyline itself was great, so one of my favorite feuds as a wrestling fan. In my 15 years of watching wrestling, one of my favorite feuds, Cena and Styles from the summer of 2016, and when it carried over in early 2017 as well. But they did that. There's not many other people they've signed in recent years that I would say, oh man, I can't wait for this person to face John Cena. Anyone that would have made sense, like Adam Cole or Keith Lee or Aleister Black, all went to AEW. They're not in the company anymore. Just kind of thinking about it now, like Karrion Kross, would anyone really care about that at this point? Probably not. He's faced and feuded with pretty much everyone else. Like the biggest, it wasn't a dream match, but like the biggest similarities that he had to a certain superstar in the roster that would have been interesting when they matched up was Austin Theory, and that feud sucked. That feud ended up being nearly non-existent when Cena came back earlier this year. He had one promo on television, did not come back, did not do any other promos or anything until arriving at WrestleMania, losing to Theory in a fairly underwhelming match, and that was it. And Theory has not benefited since, really at all, from that victory whatsoever. So that was probably it, and even that wasn't all that good. There really isn't anyone else on the active roster that he hasn't already faced that I would want to see him face. So honestly, even when you include NXT, like who's even in NXT that would make sense? Braun Breaker? I mean, is that a dream match? No. We'd be really stretching the definition of dream match if that was the case. As far as when we could see him return next, I answered this a couple of months ago as far as not this question exactly. Could this be his last match at WrestleMania 39? I said no then. I still stand by that. I do not think we've seen the last of Cena in the ring. He is definitely inching closer to retirement, though. I mean, his last match at Mania was not great. We did not know that when I first talked about this a couple months ago. He is definitely inching closer to retirement, but then again, a 5-10 minute John Cena match, people will still watch and tune in for, and it'll still be a draw, even if it's not an instant classic, like he was going into WrestleMania, even though we barely saw him. But anyway, as far as when we could see him next, I don't think he'll be at SummerSlam. Probably WrestleMania next year if I had to guess. I mean, Cena's one of those guys where he can come back at really any pay-per-view. specifically one of the international shows like Saudi Arabia, although he hasn't worked Saudi Arabia since that first one back in 2018, the Greatest Royal Rumble. He was supposed to be at Crown Jewel 2018, but he pulled out right beforehand due to the whole journalist thing going on at the time, that whole, the journalist getting killed and whatnot, so he pulled out. Sammy didn't work a show for a long time. Kevin Owens, same thing. I don't think Cena maybe he changes his mind on that. It's not really necessary. Especially if he doesn't have many matches left anyway. So probably, if I had to guess, WrestleMania 40. It's a big milestone WrestleMania, the 40th installment in Philly. It doesn't really matter where they are for it, but they're probably going to want Cena on that show. So that would be my guess. No L from Facebook, their question was, do you think WWE should give up on the women's tag team titles? Yes and no. My answer to this for the last couple of years would have been yes, and it still is yes. But as I'm about to write about, perfect plug for this, I'm writing an article for tomorrow on Bleacher Report about how I think Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler is like their last real chance at getting it right with the women's tag team titles. Now, I know we've said that before with Bayley and Sasha and this team and that team and whatever. But I really do feel like, and this is probably a hot take, I do think Ronda and Shayna can be the catalyst for change in that division. What we saw from them on Raw this week with Shayna versus Raquel going all of fucking 90 seconds was not my idea of change. It wasn't even really anything having to do with the women's tag team division, but it didn't really serve much of a purpose either other than just getting them on TV. I do think that they're a good enough team, and after what I saw in their tag team match last week with Katana Chance and Kaden Carter, I do think that they have the potential to be a good set of women's tag team champions and really do the division good. Like Bayley and Sasha did. No one will ever top Bayley and Sasha as far as what they did for that division, and it's quite a low bar, I get it, but they were easily the best WWE women's tag team champions we've ever had. More than the fucking Iconics, whose reign was awful back in 2019. Better than Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss. Better than the Kabuki Warriors or anyone else that's held those championships in the last couple of months, or years rather. Naomi and Sasha could have been good champions, but they left before they could really get going, and it didn't sound like those belts were headed in the right direction anyway, so I can't blame them, even over a year later, and that's a whole other story. But Sasha and Bayley, when they first won them, and then when they won them back in 2020, they were a great set of champions. They went to all three brands, they were well represented, they had consistent, frequent championship defenses. They didn't feel overly important, but the belts were main eventing shows. They were defended on pay-per-views. So I would go with Sasha and Bayley as far as being the best tag team champions they've had for that division. Will Ronda and Shayna surpass that? No. But I am willing to give it a chance. Ask me again in 2 or 3... And the answer is still probably no. I still don't like the idea of a women's tag team division in WWE, only because they don't know how to do it properly. I don't think they'll wake up tomorrow and say, you know what? After 4 years, let's finally start to figure this out and start to book this division properly. I don't think that day is ever going to come. The idea of women's tag team wrestling, even in really any company, AEW, even Impact recently as well, they have a lot of women, which is great. I would rather see those women utilized for a mid-card championship. And we already have 2 championships as it is. Well, 3 if you include NXT. 3 main singles titles. I would rather see a mid-card title that was not a tag team title that is defended across all 3 brands. To give something, again, I am a proponent of less is more. We don't need championships for everyone. But if they are going to have another title for the women, which is totally fine, and I could see why that would be, wanted and people would pull for that and want to see that sort of thing. I think, and I've said this before, I think a mid-card championship, a singles mid-card championship, would make more sense. Because they just don't have any consistent teams like Katana Chance and Kaden Carter, who have been together for the last couple of years, but that's one team. Every other team is broken up or been released or whatever. They're just not good with consistency in that division. They're not really good with consistency, period, but specifically with women's tag team wrestling. In the men's division, they've had the fucking Profits, Usos, New Day, Alpha Academy even, all these teams that have been together for a few years now. The women's tag team division doesn't have any teams that stay together for more than a few months. And that's a problem. Even in NXT before recently. So they really have to commit to making it work. I wouldn't give up on it 1,000% quite yet. I mean, I would probably do the change now. I am less in favor of that now that Ronda and Shayna are champions. And I'm probably just being stupidly optimistic when I say I think they have a shot at turning it around. But then again, anything Ronda Rousey, for the most part, has been involved in since she came back to the company in early 2022 has not been good. This might be no exception. I'm not saying it will be. I just have faith that it could be, with the right direction, right effort put into it, from all involved, the talent themselves, creative, the head of the company, whatever. More than likely, though, as I've said before, a mid-card championship, a singles title for all the women of Raw, SmackDown, and NXT that could travel across all three brands, like the women's tag titles, I feel like would just make more sense, as opposed to just putting women at random together for a fucking team that no one's going to care about in 6 weeks, or going to be broken up with, might be broken up in 6 weeks anyway. The women are going to be on their own regardless, so you might as well just take advantage of that, because not everyone can be in the main championship picture at one time, especially when you have fucking Charlotte Flair going for the championship every 5 minutes, and she's constantly in the title picture. A mid-card belt might get people like Tegan, Candice, Mia Yim, people like that on TV more often than they already are, which is really to say none at all. They're barely on TV. If we were to have another women's championship, I know I'm long-winded here, but it would be that. It would be a singles mid-card title and not the tag titles. But again, I'm willing to give it a chance with Ronda and Shayna holding them. Their second question, thoughts on Okada versus Bryan Danielson at Forbidden Door, and do you see any other matches being announced in the coming weeks? I mean, Dynamite's tonight. I'm sure we'll find out the remainder, if not a majority of the card tonight, I would assume. I think those are the only two matches made official so far are Okada and Danielson and Omega and Ospreay for the New Japan United States Championship. That's it. Well, we need more than that. We need more matches announced for the card than that. I've heard Punk and Kenta rumored. Whatever Sonata's going to be doing might be announced on Dynamite tonight. I think Sonata's still the IWGP Heavyweight Champion, right? I don't really follow New Japan too consistently. I just kind of pick up what I see on social media and whatnot and websites and stuff like that. I assume he'll be on that show. Hopefully it's not as snake-bitten with injuries as it was last year. And last year's show was great. And I think I already answered this from John last week, John Ritland. I think he asked me, is this year's show shaping up to be better than last year's? We only know 2 matches, and it's already better than last year's. Honestly, we could only have Okada and Danielson and Omega and Ospreay, and I would be content. To be completely honest with you, if it was only those 2 matches, and it was like an hour-long show, maybe a little bit longer than that, depending on how much time those matches got, and they really built them up, that, to me, would suffice as a standalone show. I know that's not what this is. They'll add another 8 fucking matches and shit that's just not necessary. As far as what matches they might do, like I said, Punk and Kenta, I'm not convinced that's what they're going to do. It makes sense, the whole GTS thing, and Kenta's called out Punk before for the last couple of years now. I would like to see it. Is it as much of a dream match? I mean, I hate using that term at this point because there's really, to me, no dream matches left in wrestling, really. And there haven't been for some time. But if we were to get Punk on that show, is Punk and Kenta a dream match as it is? No. Was it a couple of years ago? I would say it was close to it. Because anytime Kenta, I mean, I know Kenta came up with the fucking move and he started using it first. But Kenta, whenever he would do the GTS in WWE and NXT and whatever, people always assumed it and associated it with Punk. And interestingly, he joined NXT literally months after Punk left, got fired, whatever. Like, literally right after. And not that they had really anything to do with each other, but I'm just saying, like, they never really were in the same place at the same time. So running that back, and not even running it back, I think doing it for the first time would be pretty cool. As far as other matches, I mean, they started the Forbidden Door build a lot earlier last year, like 2 weeks earlier, right after Double or Nothing. And again, they've already announced Omega and Ospreay and Danielson Okada. They did the video packages for both matches on the show, I think last week. They need more matches than that. For a full pay-per-view, they need, I mean, to me, 6 would suffice. Tony Khan would fucking never. They'll probably have 10 plus matches on the show, including the fucking pre-show again. I would prefer 6, maybe 7 matches. They'll probably have more than that, I'm sure. They want to squeeze as many people on the show as possible. To me, I know he's the AEW World Champion. MJF does not need to be on the show. I'm not even really sure what you do with MJF. I mean, it's not like one of those type of pay-per-views where you can do dream matches across the card and it's champion versus champion. New Japan doesn't want a lot of their people beat, and AEW probably doesn't want a lot of their people beat. So then what do? Like, we end up with a lot of multi-man matches. And that's fine, honestly, if we're getting just Omega and Ospreay and Danielson and Okada. Those 2 alone, I'm content. Anything else is just icing on the cake. So Punk and Kenta would be nice. Anything else, I'm not really sure. I'm not overly familiar with the New Japan roster, especially now that Jay White's not there. He was one of those people like, oh, hopefully he'll be on Forbidden Door, but he's already in AEW, so it doesn't really matter. Who else is even there? I mean, they don't have an Intercontinental Champion. I don't remember who the tag team champions are. Mercedes being there would have been awesome, but obviously she's hurt. And her and Saraya, I heard at one point, was rumored. That would have, I mean, Saraya's run so far has pretty much been not a waste, but I mean, I wasn't really overly expecting greatness anyway, but her run has not been great in AEW. Especially in the ring, her matches have really been very hit or miss. Mostly miss, unfortunately. I mean, that match doesn't really do a lot for me, but just to get Mercedes on the show would have been sick. Maybe she could still show up after a match is over and confront someone, and we get her and like fucking Tony Storm at some point down the road. I don't know. But still, I'm looking forward to it, though. At Reborn Again, speaking to John Ritland from the Twitter machine and on YouTube, Real Honesty with John Ritland. Check out his channel, does great work. His first question was, so the Money in the Bank card is taking shape. How do you think it looks so far? I think it looks pretty good. I know they just added Cody and Dominic on Monday's Raw, and I wasn't really I'm not excited for it per se, but I mean, the dynamic I like a lot. Cody's one of the most over baby faces in the entire company. Dominic Mysterio gets more heat than a majority of anyone on either roster on the main roster, or really anyone else in the entire company. So it should be a fun dynamic. The crowd should absolutely be hot for it. The match itself probably won't be above Raw quality, but the actual like dynamic and atmosphere in London for the match should be fun. Charlotte and Asuka, which I'll get to momentarily, is not happening at the pay-per-view. That's on the SmackDown before the pay-per-view, like the day before in London on SmackDown. So that's not on the show, but we have the two Money in the Bank ladder matches, which we don't know everyone so far. We know everyone in the men's. We don't know everyone in the women's, but both matches are shaping up to be quite good. I'm looking forward to those Money in the Bank ladder matches per usual, which really sell the show. I mean, honestly, the rest of the show doesn't even matter. Whatever Roman's going to be doing is going to be must-see, whether it's him and Jay, or rather him and Jimmy, one-on-one, or Roman in solo against the Usos in a tag team match. That should be good stuff. Even if the World Championship's not on line, which is fucking dumb, that should still be very interesting to see how they go about that and what it leads to, who wins, and whatever. I am intrigued by that whole thing. And then Rollins and Balor, which was also made official on Monday's Raw for the World Heavyweight Championship. Obviously, the outcome is never going to be in doubt. I mean, Balor's not fucking winning. He's just hardly a threat at this point, but it should be a good match if nothing else. And I think they're going to add one more match, right? Maybe Gunther and Riddle for the Intercontinental Championship. And if they do that, that should be awesome as well. They could very well just as easily save that for SummerSlam. I mean, that's not until early August. That's not for another little less than 2 months. I'm not sure if they wait that long, but if they add that to the card, that'd be another great match for them to do on that show. Next question, also from John. Does it feel like AEW may be overextending themselves with Dynamite and Collision, at least as far as ticket sales go? Sure, attendance numbers will fluctuate for any company, but it's not looking good, is it? Honestly, that was one of the things I was thinking of when they announced Collision. If they're making more money from that show, from whatever they're being offered by Warner, or whatever the fuck it is, that's great. And that alone makes the show a success, regardless of what it does in the ratings, even if it gets canceled in like a year, which I don't think it is. It seems like Warner Media, whatever, again, the parent company is, like, I always forget. If they were disappointed with AEW, then they would not be giving them more programming. Rampage is still a thing. Dynamite's still in primetime on Wednesdays, whenever it's not kicked out of that time slot. When at this point, it really hasn't been. Rampage has been, what's the word? I always forget the word, but it's bumped around on Friday afternoons and Friday nights and Saturday afternoons and Saturday nights and whatever. It's constantly being preempted. That's the word I was looking for. Dynamite lately has not, which is a plus. That being said, though, I mean, they're giving them Collision, which is great. The ticket sales are not impressive at all. I mean, they sold a few more tickets. I mean, when I say a few, I mean like several hundred more, maybe 1,000 or 2 more. Not enough to make a major difference. When Punk was announced for that first Collision show in Chicago coming up on Saturday, I think the way they've gone about it is really fucking weird. With like, all right, we're doing Collision. All right, here are the cities. All right, we're doing it in Chicago. All right, here's Punk. All right, here's the first match. Like, they've done that every week now for a fucking month. And at this point, it's like, all right, just cut to the chase. They really would have just benefited, honestly, from doing it all at one time. And I know there's something to be said about just doing everything at once. Like, why do that when you can really drag it out? it hasn't benefited the interest around the show really at all. It's people are as excited as they were before. I don't really think that's changed. Whether you were excited or whether you weren't excited, I don't really think that's changed based on the way they've rolled out the announcements in recent weeks. They probably did that not to take away from Double or Nothing, which was an afterthought of a show anyway. I enjoyed the show, but even if they announced Punk's return prior to that pay-per-view, and he wouldn't be on that pay-per-view regardless, it still would have overshadowed the show. I mean, even talk about CM Punk overshadowed Double or Nothing, even without it not being announced officially at that point. And that was the plan anyway, for Punk to be announced even before Double or Nothing as part of like the upfronts or whatever, and then something went wrong and they had to like make good with him or whatever the fuck it was. So anyway, the ticket sales for Chicago are good. Everywhere else is not good for the most part. A lot of those Canada shows, the ticket sales are like 1,500, 2,000, 2,500. That sucks. I mean, AEW has done a lot more fans in other markets and including those same markets before with Dynamite. That's not good. I don't know if the show has to be established first or people need to know what they're getting with this show or whatever the fuck it was. But like I was going to say earlier, that was what I was thinking about when they announced Collision last month, was the fact that it's cool that they're getting more programming, and I've mentioned this before, that it could be a positive. But from a business standpoint, if the attendance for Dynamite already is not that strong, I mean, say what you will about the product, there's probably a correlation there. The attendance for Dynamite has not been overly strong in some time now, at least not consistently. To then add another show 3 days later on Saturday nights is always going to be a lot weaker than the Wednesday show. People can go after work, and Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, even Thursdays. I know SmackDown's on Fridays, but Saturday it's typically a night when people go out and stuff like that and have other events going on and parties and stuff like that. So I'm not saying that's the reason why the ticket sales aren't doing well. I'm not going to make excuses for AEW, because they probably could produce strong ticket sales consistently on Saturdays for that show if it's a good show. I just don't understand, like, the timing of it was weird, because attendance for Dynamite, like I said, has not been strong in a while, and then you go ahead and announce another show that people have to buy tickets for. If not enough people are going to this one, then why would they start buying tickets for that one? You know what I mean? So maybe that'll change in time. I hope it does. It's not looking good. I have seen a lot of people talking about it on my timeline this week, which I'm glad it's getting attention, because typically this sort of stuff just gets overlooked and no one talks about it. It's certainly not fucking good, but hopefully it can improve in time. How? Maybe they just make the show more must-see. Maybe it's the presence of Punk or someone else. I don't know. I know Punk was going to be on the show, and then maybe someone else. Is Andrade a difference maker, or fucking Pac, or Powerhouse Hobbs? Probably not. Miro, I doubt it. I like all those guys, but I highly doubt it. His third question: as we approach the halfway point of 2023, what would be your 3 favorite and least favorite movies of the year so far? Side note, yes, I will be doing my own lists, as I've seen 130 movies released so far this year. That's crazy. Check out John's list on his channel coming up soon. I actually, on a related note, just joined Letterboxd, which John, I assume you probably don't use it just because you do all your reviews in video form. It's much more in-depth, and you've built up a great base with your YouTube channel. That's probably why. I'm a big writer, obviously. That's my thing. So I've joined Letterboxd, and they're not full-on reviews. I probably write more than the typical reviewer, honestly, for movies I've seen this year and any other year. Now, not a lot of films are on there, but I've probably written reviews for like close to a dozen movies so far, largely for everything I've seen this year in theaters or otherwise. And it's a really cool service, and it allows me to log and see what I've seen this year, because I've always wanted to do that. I don't write down, I saw this movie on this date. I can typically remember, but there's a lot of movies I've seen that I've definitely forgotten that I went to go see in theaters. So I really like the service. You can follow me and find me there on, just type in Graham Romina, not Graham Matthews. It might be under Graham Matthews. I doubt it. I think it's just, my username is WrestleRant, but the name is Graham Romina, my real name. So you can find me there, follow me there for all my movie reviews and whatnot. As far as movies I've seen this year that were among my favorites, I'll just say this right off the bat. For least favorites, as far as stuff you didn't specify theatrical releases, but not even stuff I've seen on streaming. And I don't really watch a lot of streaming movies. But as far as stuff I've seen on streaming that I just didn't like, or even in theaters, The only movie that comes to mind, and this came out last year, but I saw it. It was the first movie, unfortunately, I saw it 2023, Babylon. And I think John and I talked about that, like, were we going to see it or whatever. And I think I told John when we did our big 2020 movie review video late last year that I put it up at the beginning of 2023, I was going to see it. And I did with Alexis because she wanted to see it. It was not good. Not the worst movie I've ever seen, but easily my least favorite movie of the entire year. Like, I was checking my watch, my phone to see, all right, when is this fucking thing over? It dragged on. A lot of unnecessary bullshit. The first fucking act was bizarre to me. Just way too over the top and whatever. So I did not like that movie at all. Megan I enjoyed, and Ant-Man I enjoyed, but as far as favorite movies I've seen this year, it's hard, honestly, it's hard to narrow it down to just 3, because even just recently, I've seen a lot of great movies. Fast X, I'm not even the biggest Fast and Furious fan, but we saw that, I think I mentioned this on the show before a couple of weeks ago. We saw that last month, and it was an excellent movie. It was, like, really, really good. A lot better than I thought it would be after the disaster that was 9. 9 I thought sucked. 10, I was skeptical, but we saw it, and I really, really liked it. I would not probably put that in my top 3. Another honorable mention, John Wick 4 I thought was an excellent movie. I went back and watched the first 3, which I'd seen 3 before. I had never seen 1 or 2. I went back and watched those on Peacock prior to seeing 4, like the week leading up to it. I watched all 4 movies, all 3 and then 4 on that weekend. Fantastic movie. Like one of the best franchise/sagas I've ever seen. That was great. For my 3 favorite, you said favorite, not best. But my 3 favorite movies I've seen this year, they were all relatively recently, but in no particular order. The Super Mario Bros. Movie back in April, Guardians 3 last month, and then Spider-Verse earlier this month on my birthday. So, it's hard to rate which one's my favorite. Spider-Verse is definitely the best movie of the 3, but Guardians just hits different. I'm a big Guardians guy. Mario, too, I'm very nostalgic about that stuff, and the movie I just thought was a lot of fun. Those would be probably so far my favorite 3 movies I've seen in 2023. I am planning on seeing The Flash at some point, as well as the Elementals movie, and even Little Mermaid. We talked about that here on the show a couple weeks ago. I still have yet to see that with Alexis, but we will get around to seeing it soon. Flash probably this weekend, and hopefully Elementals maybe this weekend as well. We'll soon see. At Kyle Rochelle 19 from Twitter, their question was, why are Charlotte Flair and Asuka having a match on SmackDown for the championship? Why not wait until Money in the Bank? Because they feel like they have a full card as it is. So like I said earlier, we're getting whatever the Roman Reigns match is going to be. He's advertised for that show. He will be on that pay-per-view. So it's whatever the Roman Reigns match is going to be. The 2 ladder matches, which is 3. Rollins and Balor, which is 4. And then Cody and Dominic, which is 5. And I don't even know if they're going to have a 6th match. Because the ladder matches might take up so much time that they may not even feel that they need it. If they do add a 6th match, honestly, it's probably going to be Gunther and Riddle for the Intercontinental Championship. In my opinion, I would rather they save that for SummerSlam if they can drag it out, and I would do Charlotte and Asuka on that show instead. Now, that SmackDown before Money in the Bank is kind of like a small extension of the pay-per-view. It might be in the O2, I'm not sure, but it's going to be in London. They're going to be in London for that SmackDown. It's going to be an electric atmosphere even for that show before the pay-per-view, which is cool. So I'm looking forward to that. Wait, at the same time, though, let me think. If it airs at 8 o'clock... Or no, they're just filming it at 3 o'clock. They're filming it at 3 o'clock local time, but it airs at 8 o'clock Eastern. I'm thinking, like, is SmackDown going to air early that day? But I've definitely have wondered this before, and I figured out that I'm just an idiot for even wondering. That's probably what they'll do. But yeah, so they're going to do SmackDown the night before. That's when the match is. It doesn't bother me that they're doing it on SmackDown and none of the pay-per-view. And honestly, it is weird because we've had, like, even on the most recent Saudi Arabia show, we had 3 women's matches on the show. Rhea and Natalya barely counts. It was like fucking 90 seconds, but it still counts. I mean, we had that match. We had Bianca and Asuka, where Asuka beat Bianca for the belt. And then Trish and Becky. So far as it is, unless I doubt they move. I doubt they would announce Asuka and Charlotte for SmackDown and then just end up doing it at the pay-per-view. That seems pretty silly to me. Could they do Charlotte and Asuka on SmackDown and then build to a triple threat of the pay-per-view? Yeah, that's very possible with Bianca. I just feel like that's such a short turnaround time because the pay-per-view is like the next fucking night. They're already kind of building it, so it's not really a problem. But maybe the winner faces Bianca at the pay-per-view. I don't know. That just seems weird to me. I agree. It is also just odd that we're getting a women's Money in the Bank ladder match, but seemingly no other second women's match on that show. Rhea's doing nothing right now as far as the women's title is concerned. And I'll get to her in a moment because other people asked about that. It is weird, honestly. I would rather they do just Charlotte and Asuka on that show and not Gunther and Riddle, and they just save that for Raw or SummerSlam or whatever. But that's what they're doing, so they just want attraction for that SmackDown, and they've got it. His second question, speaking of Rhea Ripley, what do you think of Rhea Ripley's new championship belt? When will Rhea be a part of the women's division again? She's tied up in Judgment Day, which is cool, that the group is now successful, but why is Rhea not feuding with anyone? Is it because there's no one until Becky Lynch is free? Yeah, that's probably exactly what it is. Not to excuse it, because I agree. Other people have said here on this show, and just I've seen elsewhere, that Rhea Ripley's the problem. She doesn't defend the fucking thing. It's because they built up no one to face her, is the problem. Natalya was a joke. I know Natalya's established and whatnot, but she's a joke. No one cares about Natalya. That was a quick squash that should have been to the pay-per-view. And then before that, she faced Zelina in Puerto Rico at Backlash, which was a really good match and had a good little build and whatever. So it's not like she won the championship in April and she hasn't defended it since. She dominated a Clash of Champions or Night of Champions as she should have, and she had a good match with Zelina back at Backlash. So she's had 2 title defenses. She doesn't have one like waiting in the wing, like a challenger waiting in the wings right now. But that's because Raw has done nothing to build anyone up. Candice LeRae got one video package, 2 or 3 weeks ago? And we haven't seen her on the show since. Indy's hurt right now. Zoe's tied up with Becky, who's tied up with Trish. So I honestly do believe, I agree, they're probably holding off on Becky until after she's done with Zoe and Trish. And then they'll do Rhea and Becky probably either at SummerSlam, probably not at SummerSlam, maybe soon after. I don't think the Becky, Trish, Zoe thing will be done until SummerSlam. And then they could do Becky and Rhea after that, which I'm looking forward to, but there really should be other names in that division that they build up to face Rhea in the meantime. Someone like a Candice. Tegan Nox would be great, but they haven't built her up at all, and she's also doing heel stuff on Main Event, so that tells me they're probably not going to build her up as a babyface. Nikki Cross, I don't give a fuck about Nikki Cross at this point. She's nice enough, and she's not bad, but like, as a character, I just don't give a shit about Nikki Cross. Who else even is there in that division? I honestly don't even know. So they need to do a better job of building up other women, and then that's when Rhea can defend the championship. Until then, it's not like she's not on the show. They gave her a video package on Monday, and she's on the show every week as part of Judgment Day. I do agree it would be nice if there was an actual feud over the championship right now that was interesting, and I do think the new belt is sexy looking, way more than the new WWE Women's Championship belt over on SmackDown. I think Raw definitely got the better of the belts as far as which belts look better compared to SmackDown. But I do think Rhea needs an actual feud. I agree. Who that's with? Candice would be great, but again, they need to do more to build her up, because currently she means nothing. That's the problem. Noob_N_Code TV. What are your thoughts on the new designs for the women's championships? I pretty much say it's lazy design. It's a lazy design, or lazy designs, I guess, because he asked about both. Because I expected something new and unique, but hey, I'm not complaining. It's better than the Raw and SmackDown crap. I've said that before. Like, listen, I think the women's one isn't... I mean, I honestly think it looks better than Roman's. The white and the yellow or gold or whatever the fuck it is looks better than the black and the yellow, or the black and the gold, that Roman's championship has. That one does not look good to me. And I've said that before. I said that last week. But the women's one looks better. Rhea's looks even better than Asuka's. Would I like unique designs? Yes. I saw that the reasoning was why they went with the ones that they did for the women was that they want them to look like they're on the same level as the men's. I guess, but UFC. I don't give a fuck about UFC. People saying, oh, the UFC one's copying it. It's got the big logo. I don't give a fuck about UFC. I don't watch UFC. I don't give a shit about UFC. In the past, WWE has had other women's titles that had different designs than the men's. The Divas belt was a giant joke. It was a giant toy, but it was a different design than the men's. And the old women's championship was pretty basic, but it was its own championship. I don't like when every belt looks exactly the same. At least now we're down to 2 and not 4. Because before it was the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships and the WWE title, whatever the fuck it was, and the Universal Championship all looked alike, just with different straps and colors in the middle. That was the only discrepancy. Now we're down to 2. And the World Heavyweight Championships look alike, the men's and the women's on Raw. But at least those are nice looking championships. And I'll get to what the WWE titles look like and why I don't hate them. in the hate they get and stuff like that. But you know what? At least they got rid of the branding crap. That to me was the top takeaway. No more Raw belt and no more SmackDown belt. It was always dumb that they did that, and we're finally moving away from that. It was long overdue. So thank God. But again, I'm not a big fan of Asuka's, but the women's one on Raw that Rhea holds looks great. Alexis, in the 5 years that we've been together, has never said that she's ever wanted the championship until Monday when Rhea came out, or she was presented with that new championship, and she said she wanted that belt. So at some point, I'm probably going to have to buy a fucking Women's World Championship from WWE shop. His second question, your thoughts on Charlotte Flair's return this past Friday on SmackDown and pretty much over Charlotte coming back and getting title shots, especially on Asuka. Can we just end this feud between Asuka and Charlotte? This feud has been boring for the last 5 years. I agree. It's been done to death. I mean, they feuded when Charlotte and Asuka first had their match at WrestleMania 34, and they had a great match, but again, they went on to do it another million times, and Charlotte ended Asuka's streak at WrestleMania. They had a couple more matches later on in the year when they had that triple threat TLC match for the SmackDown Women's Championship at TLC that December. Charlotte, remember, she fucked her over by ending the streak at WrestleMania 34, but she also ended Asuka's reign as SmackDown Women's Champion right before WrestleMania 35 and took the belt to WrestleMania, and Asuka instead was relegated to a pre-show battle royal that she did not even win. So Asuka, she has beaten Charlotte before. She beat her clean, actually, by submission. She's the only person, I think, to have beaten all 4 horsewomen by submission in title matches, I think. Maybe not in title matches. I think she beat... maybe she did beat Sasha in a title match. I don't remember, but by submission. But she's beaten all 4 horsewomen before by submission, including Charlotte on Raw in 2020. So they had a match in 2020 that actually sent off Charlotte, and she was attacked backstage by Nia. That's how they explained it. But they had a match on Raw in 2020. And I think early in 2020 as well, they had matches on Raw right after Charlotte won the Royal Rumble. I remember that too. They came back. Charlotte came back and actually teamed with Asuka for the WWE Women's Tag Team titles. They had more matches when Charlotte came back in 2021 and Rhea was the champion and they were all feuding over the championship. They had more matches then. They have literally feuded almost non-stop for the last 5 years. That was 2021. Did they have any matches last year? I don't think they did because Charlotte was on SmackDown and Asuka was on Raw. Now they're on the same show. And I don't think that changed. So I think 2022 might have been the only year of those 5 where they did not have a match or a formal feud. And now they're running it back again. Like anyone gives a shit. Yeah, listen, Charlotte coming back. I like Charlotte a lot, but she's always in the championship picture. Do I hate, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I just don't understand why they can't come up with something for her that's not in the title picture. That's the problem, and she's even said that as well. If they have other important women or another important storyline, then they could do that, but they just don't bother to build anyone else up. They have Rhea and Bianca, and that's great. I think you can get to a point where you're doing, not even at WrestleMania, Asuka and Io for the, I almost said the SmackDown Women's title. It's the Raw title, but the WWE Women's title with Asuka and Io, and then do Charlotte and Bianca as a non-title feud going into SummerSlam. I think you can get 2 matches out of it. That's a non-title feud I would like. Becky's doing non-title stuff. Sasha's done non-title stuff. Bayley's done non-title stuff. Why not Charlotte? It makes no sense. Her just coming back and demanding a title shot on night 1 is just so fucking lazy. We've seen it so many times, it's hard to care. Let's see. His third question. So with Camille defeating everyone in the NWA Women's Division, who's next for her to face? Also, what's next for Natalia Markova after the Crockett Cup? Will she challenge for the NWA Women's TV title, or will she go to another wrestling promotion like WWE or AEW? I've heard nothing about WWE or AEW being interested in Markova. She's really good. I don't answer a lot of NWA questions on the show that you send in just because no one really watches the NWA besides me and you, I would assume. But I will answer this. I thought they had a really good match, Camille and Natalia. It wasn't entirely smooth, but I actually liked the match overall. Probably the best match in the entire fucking 2-night pay-per-view last weekend. Over Crockett Cup weekend, actually. So a weekend and a half ago. But yeah, I don't know what's next for Camille. I really did think Natalia would be the person to beat Camille. She's beaten literally everyone. There's no one left. They just have the championship on her at this point, just to have the title on her. And I think that's silly, with no real end in sight. And I like Camille, and her matches are really good. She's improved a lot. But it's time to move on, I think. Natalya, I could see her going after the NWA Women's TV title. That would make sense. I assume that's the direction at some point. I mean, NWA has seemingly no fucking form of long-term planning at all. Long-term storytelling or whatever, from what I could tell. But that would make sense. Again, could she go to WWE or AEW? Yeah, but WWE, I don't think has hired anyone all year, for starters. And then for AEW, she would probably just be another woman on the roster. They already have enough women as it is that are not doing jack shit. So I would not expect that to become a reality anytime soon. At Iwagu91 from Twitter, their first question was, we had a lot of questions this week, which is great. He said, what are the odds that Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn get new tag team title belts? I would say quite high. I think we don't have new women's tag team title belts, but they're fixing that issue by merging the NXT and the WWE women's tag team titles. They gave Roman a new championship. We got a new World Heavyweight Championship. Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships, those championships have been rebranded. So I honestly think at this point it's pretty high that they get new championships. I would not get my hopes up. It'll probably just be the same fucking belts that we had, honestly, before the brand split in 2016. It'll probably just be those same belts, but with a black strap, as opposed to red and blue. So just to give you a heads up. But I would put money on KO and Sammy getting new belts soon, and hopefully it is on the sooner side. We don't have to wait much longer. Their second question, your thoughts on Claudio Castagnoli's post-WWE career. It's been good. I mean, he hasn't been doing like indie stuff or like in New Japan as much as I thought he could be or should be or would want to or whatever. He's primarily been only, I think, in WWE not in WWE, I'm sorry, in AEW and Ring of Honor. Even in Ring of Honor lately, they really haven't done anything with Claudio. His focus is primarily the Blackpool Combat Club stuff, which has been really good overall. He's constantly in AEW TV, which is key. He's been the Ring of Honor champion twice. He's been champion for almost 6 months now since he won it back. He's had a decent reign. He's had a good run. Claudio will never be AEW World Champion. He'll never get beyond a certain level in that company. But I think the level that he's at right now in Ring of Honor is perfect. Him as a mid-card champion in AEW would be cool, kind of like Samoa Joe was for a while. So he's had a good career. Honestly, I think he made the right choice. People might say, if he stuck around for a couple months longer, Triple H would have been in charge. But it's like, what would Triple H even have done with him? He would have been in the Shinsuke Nakamura role, which is good. But Claudio's been with WWE a lot longer than Shinsuke. Shinsuke can kind of coast along as a mid-card attraction for probably another 5 years. I know he's already 40 plus. What is he, 45? Maybe. Shinsuke's up there. He might be 40 now, 42, I don't remember. But Shinsuke can continue doing that for another 5 years. Claudio does not have that much time left, and he was in WWE for 10 years. He could have been the Intercontinental Champion. He never held that championship, which we've talked about before, which is completely ridiculous because he fit that title to a T, and he's gone for it before, but he never won it. I don't think he would have beaten Gunther. Gunther was already champion when Triple H took over. They probably would have had a match. Gunther would have won, and that would have been it for Claudio. He would have been back on the back burner on either show. It wouldn't have mattered. So I think he made the right choice. A nice change of scenery in AEW, new fresh opponents, new stuff to go for, Ring of Honor. He's currently probably in the best spot he could possibly be in at this point in his career. Next question, also from @Iwagu91. Do you think that Omega versus Ospreay will headline this year's Forbidden Door? I'm going to say Okada and Danielson go on last. Because we already saw, I would not complain with Omega and Ospreay going on last, but we already saw that match earlier this year. That one has a championship, and the Danielson and Okada one does not. I get that. But I just feel like that's maybe not first time ever, but it's a really big match. I'm probably more excited for that even than I am for Omega and Ospreay too. I don't really care about the New Japan US Championship. That feels like a co-main event to me. Maybe they come up with another even big. I doubt they come up with anything bigger than fucking Danielson and Okada. I've seen people say maybe MJF and Tanahashi. Yeah, that would be cool. It shouldn't go on last. Ospreay and Cassidy was probably the best match in the entire show last year for the fucking US title, and that arguably should have been the main event in retrospect, and it was not. It was like third or fourth down the card. To me, if I was booking it, I would put Danielson and Okada on last because that's the more anticipated match. It's a bigger match. Omega and Ospreay is also big, and I would not complain if it went on last, but it's a match we already saw earlier this year, and I assume Omega's probably losing that championship. Maybe he wins, and then Ospreay goes for a third match at All In in London. That would be pretty cool. But I don't know. I would I would go Danielson Okada. That's the match I'm more excited for personally. LeRon Ford from Twitter, or LeRon Ford, if I mispronounce it, I apologize. I've definitely mispronounced your name before, I apologize. But your question was, why can't they get Baron Corbin and Lacey Evans' characters right after multiple repackage attempts? I have no fucking clue. And the thing is, listen, Lacey at this point, I just don't care for at all. And that's for also reasons that have taken place outside of what her WWE persona has done, how they've booked her. No, I can't say that she's dug herself deep into a hole with some of the stuff that she's done and said outside of WWE. She has her opinions. I think a lot of them are fucking dumb, but that doesn't make me, when she's on screen, care any more or less about her personally. Even if I didn't see that stuff that she's posted before on social media, just really stupid comments, in my own personal opinion. If you disagree, that's fine. But even from a booking standpoint, they just... And I don't even think Lacey's bad. I think there are other women on the roster that are worse in the ring or even on the mic than she is. I was one of the people that was actually in favor of her getting pushed when she came up to the main roster in 2019. Couple issues, though, as far as where they went wrong with her. One, they called her up too soon. I know she was in NXT for a few years, but she just wasn't ready. She had no real run in NXT. The sassy Southern Belle character I liked, but it was one-dimensional. It only got her so far. I honestly think where they really could have gotten it right with her was when they turned her babyface. Both times. In 2020, she was getting over. Late 2019, she was getting over, and they pulled the plug on that pretty quickly. Turned her heel. And then I think the last real ditch attempt was last summer when she came back as a babyface, did the whole series, and like, oh, I was in the military and my fucking parents died or whatever it was. And I'm like, wow, this is actually really interesting. And then they turned her heel. And I'm like, what the fuck? I mean, that to me was it. I mean, I was willing to give that a chance. They had the Ric Flair baby storyline, and her matches aren't great. Like, the Sergeant Slaughter-esque character she's doing now is fucking terrible. Whether Slaughter was actually in the military or not, which he wasn't, I'm not even saying, oh, it's bad because Sergeant Slaughter, it was his character first. I don't even care about that. I don't give a fuck. Whenever she comes out, I just don't care. And if you feel that way about Baron Corbin, I wouldn't blame you. I actually like Baron Corbin. He seems like a cool guy, and in the ring, I like his in-ring work a lot more than Lacey Evans. Far from the flashiest guy, but I feel like he can go in there regardless of what the opponent or who the opponent is and have a really good match. He and Drew had a couple of really good matches. He and Riddick Moss had decent matches even. But with the smaller guy specifically, he can go in there and have a great fucking match. And the failed repackages, I mean, they really... Again, Corbin's a weird case because he's had a lot of accolades. Lacey's had fucking nothing. She hasn't won shit. But Baron Corbin is a former United States champion. He was an on-air authority figure for the better part of 2018. He retired Kurt Angle. He won the Money in the Bank ladder match. He won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. He won the King of the Ring. He's had a lot of accolades, and yet he does not feel remotely as special as he should. Not that he's ever going to be special. I mean, Baron Corbin isn't amazing, but... I think he's a good talker, but they just haven't gotten it right character-wise. The Raw GM stuff got old really fucking quick. The King of the Ring stuff got old really fucking quick. The bum-ass Baron Corbin stuff they didn't run with for nearly as long. And then the Happy Corbin crap came. That got old really fast. The JBL stuff got old really fast. And I was willing to give all those characters time and a chance to succeed, and it just never worked. The booking was always, like, he's been on winning streaks before, and people just don't care. Like, to me, I feel like the best Baron Corbin, and this is just me, has been when he was just being a silent badass in NXT. And then when he first also came to the main roster, it wasn't just, oh, NXT Baron Corbin is the best Baron Corbin. I really enjoyed his main roster run in 2016, and even in 2017, up until he lost to John Cena. Up until he cashed in the briefcase and lost to Jinder Mahal, which was fucking stupid. Everything up until then, I thought they got right with Corbin. He was getting over. He was having some really good matches. He was working with top talent for the most part. And then ever since then, that was 6 years ago now, I just haven't cared. And not that I haven't cared, but it's been really hard to care. So I think Corbin has a better chance of kind of being redeemed with the right persona. Lacey at this point is just damaged goods. Like, you could say the same thing about Baron Corbin. I get it. I'm willing to give that a chance because I personally like Baron Corbin. I'm a fan of his work. Lacey, I was never really a fan. I thought she was good. She's not terrible, but her character stuff is just fucking awful. And she's been doing a lot of the same shit for years now. Corbin has at least attempted to switch it up. Lacey Evans has switched it up but just nothing has worked. Corbin's struck upon some gold on the main roster. Lacey Evans, unfortunately, has not. And whatever promise she had with certain characters fizzled out quite fast. And I just do not give a shit what they do with her at this point. Not to say anyone should be fired, but if Lacey Evans was not on the show, I would not be complaining. At the average grunt, his question was, he said, so I screwed up with last week's question, and I just wanted to clarify. I absolutely hate the new WWE Universal title just as much as you. Last thing I want to be seen as is a defender of that hideous mustard yellow belt. So a redo, hot or cold, the black WWE title belt was great and leagues better than the spinner. The only reason why people hated on it was because WWE got lazy and copied the design for other titles. Even the Winged Eagle would be hated had they done the same thing to it. So I appreciate you saying, correcting your question from last week. Honestly, even if you like that new championship, there's nothing wrong with that. I know you're insinuating that there is. I fucking hate the design. I've seen a lot of people and talked to a lot of people that said they liked it. So, I mean, listen, you wouldn't be in the minority of people, I think the design's great. I feel like it's 50-50 as far as people who like it and people who don't. So I wouldn't shame you for that. And I'm glad to know you agree and you also think it's ugly. As far as your question goes, I think that might be a hot take, but I agree with that take. So you're saying the black WWE title, the black strap WWE title, is great and leagues better than the spinner. But you're saying it gets shit because people, the WWE rather, has taken that design and copied it for other belts. I agree with that. I actually, I literally said this. I don't know if I said this last week. At least not on hashtag. I probably said it in my SmackDown review the week before. Excuse me, when this happened 2 weeks ago. I said this myself. I liked and I still like, the WWE title on a black strap normal design. I think that, I really do like that belt. Alexis never really liked it. I do. Because we've gone through the lineage of all the old championships. WWE put up a video about it a couple of months ago. And in her opinion, they've progressively have gotten worse. The spinner belt, as a kid, I loved it. But I mean, looking back on it now, it looks like a fucking toy, which I know is the point. People, it's branding. It's not about the branding of it. It's about the lack of creativity. Every 10 years, or not even every 10 years, they've got new championships before that did not last as long as the current design. Now, I know they've changed the color and this and that and whatever. We've basically had the same WWE title for the last 10 years. I agree. I do like the championship. I agree with Grunt. We are probably in the minority on that. My problem, like you said, is that they have copied that design for other championships and really haven't altered it at all. Even if it's a good design, it's not the greatest design they've ever done. I would have preferred an all-new design. They had a chance to do that with Roman, and they did not. They gave him the same fucking belt with a different color. I think that's lazy. Even the Winged Eagle, like you said, people probably would have hated that. I don't know if this is what you're saying exactly. Had they kept that around for over 15, 20 years, people probably would have hated that too, I agree. Which is why we kind of have to move on from this design for the WWE title, especially with this color. We won't anytime soon because we just got this new belt. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I like the design. The color is what I don't like, and they just use it for everything. So for literally every reason that you mentioned, I do not like that current championship. Some more creativity would be great, and it's only gotten worse. I would rather they just ditch it and go in a different direction with the logo in the middle. It's not the logo. Oh, the logo is so big and it's ugly. Well, I agree. It is because they give it to sports teams. But just because they give it to sports teams doesn't mean that they can't also have the logo in the middle and redesign a completely different championship. The World Heavyweight title is a great example of that. The logo is fucking giant in the middle of it. The old World Heavyweight Championship did not have that. They had it at the top. They did not have the WWE title logo, the WWE logo in the middle. The new one does, but it's still a great-looking title. Why can't you do the same thing and find a subtle way to include it in the WWE Championship belt? The belt we have now served its purpose. It was nice for as long as it lasted, but it's only gotten worse, and I'd rather they have a new design. That's just me. His second question, hot or cold, people need to stop treating WrestleMania 17 as if it was the end of the Attitude Era, because it wasn't. It might have been when it peaked, but it wasn't the last show of the era. I mean, the invasion angle sure wasn't part of the ruthless aggression era. That's not it's a hot take, and one I kind of agree with. Now, I wasn't growing up in that period, so I can't completely speak to it as far as, WrestleMania 17 is the end of it. The Attitude, any era is fucking weird, because you don't just say, all right, this is the era, this is the Attitude. Even people consider that Vince promo, that when he came on Raw in late 97 and said, we're ushering in Attitude and whatever, people consider that the beginning of the era. But I don't think there's ever really been in WWE canon one specific date given beyond that. Like people have said when WrestleMania 13 was the day when Steve Austin passed out to Bret Hart in the Sharpshooter, or even before that when Bret Hart turned heel on Raw, people point to that as the beginning of the Attitude Era. People point to the Montreal Screwjob as the beginning of the Attitude Era. So a lot of different points in 97. You could even point to 98 when Steve Austin became WWE Champion at WrestleMania. People point to that as the beginning of the Attitude Era because that was when he became World Champion for the first time. People point to like fucking 96 when Stone Cold first arrived in the company when he was doing Austin 316. So there is no definitive beginning date and there's no definitive end date either. It's not like a TV show that has the first episode and the last episode of a season. Eras in wrestling and really in anything are just weird because it's all subjective. You are right. The Attitude Era was still did not have the product did not have attitude after the Attitude Era. I mean, even the Ruthless Aggression Era had a lot of fucking attitude, as you would call it. It just didn't have the same stars. You could technically, you're saying, oh, the Invasion angle was a part of the Ruthless Aggression. I include the Ruthless Aggression Era starting when like the brand split started in 02. But then you would have to say, then there's a period where there's like, what's the era? That's what I'm saying. It didn't just go from Attitude to Ruthless Aggression. I would still stick with WrestleMania 17 being the end of the Attitude Era. Because people, I mean, I think what you said is a hot take, and a take if I had to choose, I would not agree with that. Because I see what you're saying, and like, why would you lump in the Invasion angle with the Ruthless Aggression Era? But why does everything have to be tied to a fucking era? That's the problem that I run into. Because I don't really think it falls into either era. The Invasion era, it sucked. For a lot of people, it sucked. The Invasion was terrible, and it was horribly booked, and it didn't have a great, culmination, payoff, whatever. It was awful. It was that year-long period where they really didn't know what the fuck to do until 2002 when they started losing more stars, and then Hogan came in, and Goldberg later came. It was like the WCW fucking period for a while. And it wasn't really until 2002 that they started building up Cena and Batista and Orton and Ray and other people, Edge. I would still say WrestleMania 17 is the end of the Attitude Era, in my own opinion, just because when Stone Cold and Vince, they were the Attitude Era. They were the epitome of what that era was all about. When they formed that alliance and they joined forces on that show, that was it. And it was all downhill from there. Not that every show in 01 sucked or whatever, but WrestleMania 17 is widely regarded as one of the greatest manias of all time. That pretty much ended the era. They had just bought WCW right before that. That was about to kick into high gear right afterward. There is a lame duck period between Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression Era, but I would still say WrestleMania 17 was the end of it. Because when Austin and McMahon raised their hands together in unison at the end of that show, it was like, all right, everything we knew about this era has officially died. And heel Steve Austin is not Attitude. That's corporate nonsense. Whether you liked it or not, that was really the end of it to me. Not having watched it at that time, but just kind of looking back, that makes sense to me. Your third question, you said a year ago that you think Roman Reigns should have another run as face champion at some point after this reign ends. Now that it's been a year later, and he's at 1,000+ days into this run, has that stance changed at all? Because I know I'm done with Roman Reigns as champion. It's all a matter of when Roman Reigns retires. I mean, Roman Reigns is late 30s now? At this rate that he shows up and has matches, Roman could be wrestling for another 10 years. So he will be champion again, I'm sure of it. And I would still be okay with a Roman Reigns babyface run as champion. This time done right, as opposed to every other time prior to 2020. I will say this, though. I know you're done with Roman as champion. I'm done with Roman in this current run as champion. I would be fine with Roman Reigns as champion as a babyface down the road. I would not be okay with Roman Reigns turning babyface while this reign is still going on. I saw the reports a week or two ago. WWE has plans for babyface Roman Reigns at some point. I think that'd be fucking ridiculous. He's been a heel-dominant champion for so long now that to turn him babyface before he can get beat would be fucking ridiculous. It's not even like he's out there he gets cheered, but Roman has his fans. He still gets a lot of heat. And for everything that they've done with this character, that just would not make sense for his arc to be as a babyface. Especially when honestly, literally anyone else in the bloodline turning babyface would make more sense than Roman Reigns at this point. I said before, Roman as a babyface with him getting kicked out of the group would be cool at some point, but that's not happening anytime soon. So yes, I'd be fine with Roman Reigns babyface champion, but not until long after this Roman Reigns run is over, if that makes sense. Not while he's champion. When I read reports like that, I hope it's along the same lines, like in 2014. Literally, it was right after the Shield broke up, and there were reports even then, oh, WWE planning for a Shield reunion. Like, that sounds like one of those conversations that you have over dinner, like, hey, we just ended this thing. Let's now start thinking about when we can get back to it. You know what I mean? Like, we've all had those conversations with different stuff in our lifetimes, I'm sure, and they're just kind of like pieing this guy thinking, oh, it'd be cool to kind of get back to a Shield reunion in 2016 or 2017, which is actually exactly what they did. They reunited in 2017, but they had a couple of one-off reunions and matches and shit in 2015 and 2016. But anyway, I assume, I really hope that's what this is, and they're just planning for years down the road and not anything that's imminent. I feel like that'd be very dumb. At Bill Meister 88, who told me that he's having a baby on the way. Not just him, obviously, him and his wife or girlfriend, whoever it might be. Congratulations, that's excellent. Check out his congratulatory video on his Twitter in Stone Cold Steve Austin fashion. That's awesome. His first question was, could you see Damian Priest winning Money in the Bank, setting up the inevitable babyface turn against Judgment Day and Finn Balor? I could see it. I don't want to see it right now. I've said this before. I love Judgment Day and their current dynamic. I think to alter that in any way would be premature. It would be silly. I would not do that. That's probably where they're going with this. But Raw already has a abundance of baby faces on that brand. They need more strong heels. Damian, I honestly could buy more at the top heel level than fucking Finn Balor at this point. Finn Balor, I think he's a great heel, but he's been so creatively damaged for a number of reasons that I just can't take him seriously against Rollins or really anyone at this point. Anyone that matters anyway. So, and Damian would probably beat him. They already have enough baby faces. They do not need to turn Damian right now. At some point, yes. Now, no. That being said, him winning Money in the Bank, could it happen? Yes. I don't really want to see it. To me, when I look at that lineup, I love Damian, and Damian's great. And him winning the briefcase would be awesome as well. He would probably just cash in on the Intercontinental Championship, especially if he's a babyface. I don't think he'd cash in on Rollins. And him cashing in on the mid-card championship, that's fucking dumb. I think Gunther should lose one-on-one in a straight-up singles match with whoever. But anyway, with Damian, honestly, there's a couple, like, I like Shinsuke, him with the briefcase. Okay, cool. Like, I love Santos, he's great. The only person that should win that briefcase in that match is fucking LA Knight. LA Knight is the only person I want to see win that match. More than anyone. I like the other guys. Probably everyone in that match I like, and I would not hate the idea of them winning. But the only guy I can really take seriously in that role and potentially at some point cashing in and being a world champion as he deserves to be with his current character is LA Knight. Bill's second question, has WWE now completely lost all momentum with Cody Rhodes? I get that he's facing the ultimate babyface, or I think you mean heel, and Dominic Mysterio Money in the Bank, but are they in danger of now losing fans' interest in him? No, I don't think so. I mean, he's coming out to great reactions every week. Ask me again in like 6 months. To me, I still feel like the plan is him and Roman at WrestleMania until The Rock realizes that everything he's touched in the last year has turned to shit and he'll come back to WWE instead because he has nothing else left, which I kid about, but we can't completely rule out that possibility. I still do think we're getting Roman and Cody at WrestleMania 40. And if we are, he has to be kept busy in the meantime doing what? I mean, he's feuding with Brock, he's feuding with Dominic. After SummerSlam, it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. Does he go after the World Heavyweight Championship? I fucking sure hope not. He doesn't win it. I feel like that'd be pretty dumb. But him and Dominic are, that's keeping him busy for now. I mean, Dominic isn't, the match won't be anything great. I said that earlier. But he gets so much heat. And Cody Rhodes gets so much fan support that it's going to make for a great dynamic and a great atmosphere in London for that match, for Money in the Bank. So, no, I don't think that they've lost all momentum with Cody. If they did, then he wouldn't be out there getting the strongest reactions of anyone on the show. Not even just for his theme song either, but like, not only just his theme song as well, but like during his matches and promos, people are still behind Cody and he's still doing great work. So what reason have we been given to give up on him? Him losing to Dominic, I'm not super high on, but if Brock cost him the match, I don't love that idea. But if, I don't know. They might set up Dominic and Rollins for SummerSlam. I can see that. I just don't like Cody losing 3 out of his last 4 pay-per-view matches. I feel like that's pushing it, but it's an option. At E13A, he's got a couple questions here. First one being, if MJF and John Cena had a promo segment together, do you think MJF would be fine? Would he be fine? Yes. Would he win? No. I didn't chime in on this on Twitter. I saw the debate. Someone tweeted about it a couple days ago. And like, who would win? The answer is John Cena. Honestly, I can't really think of many people that are on John Cena's level. And other people brought this up in the quote tweets and the replies and shit. John Cena ate the fucking Rock for breakfast during their literally their entire feud. When it started in 2011 up until 2013. The Rock had some great promos that were funny and entertaining. But he was doing childish bullshit. And Cena really hit straight to the point, calling him out for cutting or writing his promos on his hand. I mean, it was pretty like holy shit stuff. He ate The Rock alive. He ate a lot of people alive on the microphone. And really, I mean, Theory, he buried 6 feet under a couple of months ago, which I wasn't in favor of, but everything he said for the most part wasn't exactly inaccurate. Some stuff was. But people believe what Cena says because a lot of the time he speaks the truth. MJF has a lot of good lines about like, oh, yeah, you know, this and that. And MJF buried Cole on the mic last week. Cole got some good zingers in there, but MJF got a great, had pretty much a great rebuttal for a lot of the stuff that Cole had to say, and MJF had a very strong promo himself. I love that exchange. Even still, what would MJF even bring up? The fact that Nikki Bella dumped John Cena like Roman Reigns brought up a couple of years ago? Okay, cool, we've heard it a million times. We've heard that before. We've heard, what else can you even, what, his receding hairline? Like, who gives a shit? Cena, you can't really, it's hard to give anything bad about John Cena, aside from the fact that he's almost washed up at this point in the ring. You can bring that up and make a story out of that, I guess. But, like, Cena would call out MJF for, any number of things. Napoleon Complex, he's the champion, he's big fish in a small pond, and AEW, and all this other sort of shit. Make fun of this and that. I mean, MJF would be fine. That was your question. Would he win? No. I think Cena, I don't know if Cena's undefeated in verbal battles because he had a couple with Punk, and Cena got the better of Punk a few different times. But that one before Money in the Bank where Punk just fucking eviscerated Cena, and Cena's big response was, like, he punched Punk because Punk called him the New remember that? He called them the New York Yankees, and that was, after everything Punk said, that was what set him off. That was what set off Cena, and he attacked Punk for that. Like, he punched him in the mouth for that shit, which was so fucking dumb. But anyway, though, I do think, beyond that, though, Cena has not gotten shaken in the mic all that often. He buried Roman back in 2017. He got the better of AJ in the mic back in 2017. Like, he has really gone all in on a lot of people. And he's not wrong a lot of the time, whether he should be saying that shit or not. So Cena would win, hands down. I know that wasn't your question, but Cena would absolutely win. His next question, should Pretty Deadly remain aligned with Austin Theory? I'd be fine with it. Honestly, Pretty Deadly, they might be dragged down, honestly, more by Austin Theory than the other way around. Theory's the United States champion, but I care more about Pretty Deadly and whatever they do, and they're entertaining, and they're fresh faces. Theory, not that he's not a fresh face, because he's not, but also just his booking has been abysmal since Mania. Even before that wasn't great, but specifically since Mania, he's been one giant afterthought. So I would honestly rather just have Pretty Deadly doing their own thing, become number one contenders on Friday, maybe get a shot against Owens and Zayn, and they wouldn't win right now, but at some point as a future feud, I'd be down for it. I could see them winning on Friday, then getting a shot and probably losing, but it would be a good spot for them to be in and maybe get a little mini feud out of it. But as far as whether they stay aligned, it doesn't really matter to me one way or the other. His next question, should Jade Cargill become AEW Women's Champion this year? I'm going to say no. No, just because her reign as the TBS champion just ended, I would not rush another championship onto her anytime soon. Now, I know we're talking the end of the year, but it's still only June. That would be in 6 months. Who's the current champion? Toni Storm. She ain't beating Toni Storm. I would not turn her face yet anyway. She would have to take it off of whoever beats Toni. Maybe it's Jamie Hayter. I'd be fine with Jade becoming champion at some point, but we just had like a fucking 1.5 year long run from her, and she was undefeated for so long. Have her do something else for a little while that's outside of a title picture, whether it be the TBS title or the Women's World Championship. Have her go do something else for a little while and keep her busy with that. and then go back to her in the AEW Women's World Championship picture at some point much longer down the road, probably in 2024. In wrestling, their next question was, do you think that the championship title makes the man or the man makes the title? It's a good question. I think the man makes the title. I do, because Jinder has been champion, and that went fucking nowhere. Now, it made Jinder more important than he was previously, but it did not make Jinder a perennial main event player. As much as I love the guy in his moment, and even his run was pretty good, it did not make Kofi Kingston a main event player. It's all about the booking. And Kofi did not headline a single fucking pay-per-view while he was WWE champion. So, I think it's more about what the man can do for the belt. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the biggest star in wrestling when he was champion. The Rock was one of the biggest stars in wrestling when he was champion. Same thing with The Undertaker and Triple H and people like that. The championship hasn't felt as important since then. I mean, Roman being champion has changed that, because I do feel like that title is as prestigious now as it's been in a very long time. I know Roman hasn't defended it in forever, but overall his reign on the whole has been fantastic, I would say. My opinion. And he has made that championship feel more special based on how he's been booked and the storylines and stuff like that. And there's been a lot of, you say the championship, you're not saying just any world championship, but there's been a lot of forgettable Intercontinental champions, United States champions, and it hasn't done the people that have held those belts any fucking favors. They go right back to being irrelevant afterward. If anything, it does more damage to the championship than it does to the person. So the man must make the title, and the man must not be made by the championship. If it's equally beneficial and the championship's prestigious and the man's already established and he has a great reign, then great. Like Roman Reigns, it was already established and he's done great work, but the championship wasn't meaningless. It was already kind of prestigious when he won it, kind of. That's the Universal Championship that we're talking about here. Then great, but that's ideal. But it's like Gunther's a guy that he made the Intercontinental Championship more relevant. It made him more relevant as well, but I would argue that title has done more. He's done more for that title than anyone else, and he's also done more for that title than the title has done for him. And anything that he's really benefited from in the last year has nothing to do with the championship itself, or rather how he's been booked in his own work in the ring. So that's my stance on that. At Misdemeanor 6, last two questions. Am I the only one that's a bit disappointed that Kip Sabian's underrated, over-it gimmick didn't do much for him? The guy has potential. I don't give a fuck about Kip Sabian. I thought the gimmick sucked. I know you're not going to want to hear that. not to be salty, but he's been with AEW since day one. He's done absolutely nothing of note. He teamed with Miro for a cup of coffee. That was probably his last chance of really getting over. They've done jack shit with him since then. He was gone for a year. No one cared. I was at shows that he was at with the fucking box on his head. No one gave a fuck. He came back. No one gave a fuck. They put him with the Butcher and the Blade. No one gives a fuck. And I like Kip Sabian. I like him more than a lot of those undercard jobbers in AEW. He's not bad. He's a really good worker. But just the character was fucking weird. They never really explained it. They kind of expected people to just care, which was odd. And he's not special enough to warrant, all right, push this guy. He's good, but everyone on the AEW roster is good for the most part. There's no real bad wrestlers anymore. If this was 10 years ago, I would say, yeah, push the guy. But there's already so many good people. Shawn Spears is quite good. Do I care about him getting pushed at this point? Fuck no, of course not. Because he's been at a certain level for so long, I don't give a shit. Kip Sabian's been at the same level for so long, I don't give a shit. So, are you the only one that's disappointed that his character didn't go far? No, I think Kip Sabian has his fair share of diehard fans and whatnot. Do I care personally? No. I figured it wouldn't get over. It didn't. I'm not shocked, and I'm not clamoring for the guy to get a push anyway. Last question. If Drew McIntyre fails to re-sign, I think he meant to say, to WWE, and then signs to AEW, who do you want to see him face first, and why? That's a good question. I feel like everyone's first read, Chris Jericho. Not that everyone says that, but I feel like the company's mentality is, all right, if you want to get this guy over, put him with Chris Jericho. Yeah, no fucking thanks. It depends if he comes in as a babyface or as a heel. He would probably be cheered. To put him in the world title picture from day one wouldn't be very AEW-esque, but it's possible. Him and MJF off the get-go would be cool, but you should probably put him in another feud first. Assuming he comes in as a babyface, and they need more heels, him and Jay White would be pretty cool. Did him and Joe ever feud in TNA? I don't think they did. I think Joe left TNA right after McIntyre joined. I'm pretty sure. So I don't think they ever really had a chance to work together. Joe was one. I'm trying to think of like heels they have on the roster, or really anyone, I guess. Him and Omega at some point would be great. Him and Danielson never really had a program, did they? I think they had a couple of matches in WWE, but never a full-on feud. Danielson can work well with pretty much anyone, so Bryan Danielson would be great. Him and Cesaro would be cool. Claudia, whatever the fuck. It should probably be someone important, though, to kind of establish him right off the bat as a big deal, which people know he's a big deal, but you can't just bring him in and have him feud with like fucking Kip Sabian or something. Like Miro, oh, here's Miro, and let's put him in a tag team, but let me check my notes. Kip Sabian, like, what the fuck? Like, no, he has to come in and do something important right off the bat, I would say, not get lost in the shuffle. Jericho, I just don't care. Him and Adam Cole never had a formal feud, but he's a babyface right now. I'm trying to think. Swerve? Swerve's not a big deal right now, but he is quite great. I'd be down for Swerve. I just keep going back to Bryan Danielson. Him and Punk would be cool, but Punk's a babyface right now. Punk would be interesting at some point, though. Him and any of the elite guys, Omega, Page, MJF, isn't the elite, but he's an original. Darby, Jungle Boy, Sammy, it would probably be Bryan Danielson if I had to choose. It depends on what the landscape for AEW looks like in a couple months. By the end of the year, early 2024, maybe more people are gone or more people will come in or whatever the case might be. I don't think he's going there, but if he does, any one of those bigger stars would be interesting. And again, as long as it's someone of note, not Jericho, that he can get direction with off the bat and, you know, and not fall by the wayside almost immediately and find direction against someone that's of equal importance, that would be the key. And that's going to do it, guys, for today's lengthy edition, episode 498 of #AskGSM here today for Wednesday, June 14th, 2023. A lot of questions answered, over an hour of audio, almost over an hour and 15 minutes, actually. Way more than usual, way more than last week, almost an hour more than last week. We had a lot of great questions, so I'm not complaining. I want as many questions as this for episode 500, so send them in early. I mean, the questions you send in now I'll answer in episode 499 next week, but after that's over, after next Wednesday, send me as many questions as possible because I want to answer a lot of questions, one of our biggest mailbags yet, which probably won't happen, but you never know. Some weeks we have weeks like this where we get a lot of questions, some weeks we don't get many at all, and I'm fond of the shorter show, but for episode 500, I want as many questions to answer as possible, and then anyone that's around during the day on very likely that Wednesday, June 28th, or whatever day we end up doing it that week or soon after, whoever can log on and watch the stream live, then you can also ask questions then, and I can answer them live on the air. So with all that being said, guys, have an awesome one. Enjoy the rest of your week. And also, if you want to send in a question, you can do so. How could I forget? By tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not in the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section in this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.